Hello everyone, I'm Barbara from Novedge and I would like to welcome you all to our latest Novedge webinar. In this week's episode, Architectural Design Ideation in MODO. This webinar will focus on a design exploration process in MODO, and we will take concepts through different iteration using various tools and processes using MODO. And Santos will create a virtual design study model of the house on an actual site. So stay tuned. Let me tell you a little bit about Henry. Henry Santos is a CG Generalist, designer, animator, and educator with a background in architecture, CAD, BIM, ArchViz, illustration, graphic design, and audio production. He has a Bachelor's of Architecture from CalPoly, Luis Obispo, and has completed character animation studies at animationmentor.com. Henry is also a contractor with the Foundry as a MODO Workflow Consultant. Before we get going, here's an overview of what we do at Novedge. Novedge is one of the largest online stores for design software, and we offer a huge assortment of software solutions that cater to virtually every designer's needs. So put us to the test and come visit our webpage at novedge.com. And as you can see, MODO 902 just came out, so unbelievable. Great updates, and it's free for all MODO 901 users, so download it right now. And for more daily software news and limited time promotions, pay a visit to the Novedge blog and follow us on Facebook, Google+, and Twitter. Coming up next week, V-Ray for Revit. And last but not least, today's webinar is free and is being recorded. So if you want to rewatch this or any webinar episode in our collection, just head on over to Novedge's YouTube or Vimeo channels. And now I will pass the screen to Henry for his presentation. Take it away, Henry.
Thank you very much. Let me get this going here. Thank you, Barbara, for that. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this presentation. It's going to be a little bit of an overview and a little bit of a workflow description of how to use MODO in your design iterations. So taking sketches and ideas and making 3D models and continuing on with your sketching through 3D using MODO 901. Now, MODO 902 was just released, so I wasn't sure when that was going to be released. I didn't want to say MODO 902 until it was actually out, but it is out now. So for those of you who use 901, definitely go out and update. And if you don't use it, definitely look into it. So we have the Foundry's website here. Let me talk a little bit about the Foundry and their wonderful product, MODO, which I've been using for a number of years. I actually started using MODO 102, and now they're at 902, which is pretty cool. So they just released a whole bunch. Everything that I'm going to be talking about is within the MODO 901 tool set. The new features that are in 902 are absolutely amazing, but they're more towards camera tracking, camera mapping, texture mapping through cameras, and a whole bunch of other stuff that I still have to learn. So this is the MODO website, and it actually is used in design for product design, game design, and not so much in architecture except for the ArchViz component of it. Architectural visualization has been done for a long time in MODO, and there are some amazing works out there and some wonderful talent out there. And this talk is going to be more on the design side of things. So if you're interested in looking at visualization, definitely go to the website, check out their community. Now, one of the great things about MODO and the Foundry, and it started with Luxology, the originators of MODO, and now they kind of blended in with the Foundry. They have an amazing group of people in the background, both at the company developing this amazing tool and users who create these amazing works. So here's an example of stuff in the gallery. We'll take a look at that. And actually, you should take a look at these when you have time. But definitely take a look at them. It spans all sorts of genres and types and different um, fields, from visual effects to 3D modeling to game design to product design to product visualization. And they're really getting into VR stuff, which is outstanding. All right, so let's go to MODO, and maybe I'll talk a little bit about myself. I have a background in architecture through CalPoly, San Luis Obispo, and worked in the architectural field for a while, then became a graphic artist and designer, and did illustrations, did 3D, but throughout my career I've always been interested in 3D modeling and 3D design. So that led me to learning MODO and a whole bunch of other tools. I have a background in teaching CAD and BIM. I'm a huge Vectorworks fan. For those of you who love Vectorworks, I don't know all the tools now, but when it first started with MiniCAD, I was on that boat, and I jumped in early on with MiniCAD, and it turned into Vectorworks, and just really dig that program. And that's my go-to CAD program. But I also have taught BIM using MicroStation and Revit. I know a lot of you probably aren't as familiar with MicroStation as you are with Revit, but yeah, talk Revit. And I'm a huge SketchUp fan, and I've used SketchUp for a while. Another program I love. I'm program and software agnostic. It's really a tool that you would use to get something done. And for me, through all the different programs that I've used, from 3D Studio Max, from 3D Studio Release 4 on DOS, that was awesome. Up to now, MODO has been my go-to program because it kind of works with how I work, and it's really straightforward and predictable in a way. I say that in a way, but it's very, very cool. So here I'm opening up a file here, and while I open this up, I'm going to go over the different parts of MODO and kind of approach this from not necessarily a training seminar approach or a training session, but more of a tools overview and what you can do. I've chosen MODO because I can do a lot of stuff, but really you should look into MODO because of what you may be held back from and want to accomplish. Maybe there's something here that here's Emily. Get my updates out of here. So I just wanted to go over the different tools here in MODO. Now, the user interface is kind of key into any program. And having used AutoCAD and then the ribbon interface with AutoCAD and using Revit and the ribbon interface there, it's a very, very powerful interface. And when you work within that, you can do some amazing things. Now, MODO has a very straightforward approach too. It's kind of old school, but it's not outdated, I don't think. Again, that's an opinion. But when you see MODO's interface, you have it broken out into different layers or layouts. So you have model, topology. Let's go up the top here. So you have your topology layout, UV, so you can check your UVs. If you're not familiar with UVs from CAD or BIM background, UVs are a way of mapping textures onto a polygonal face. And what MODO is primarily is a polygonal modeler. And so having started in architecture and using AutoCAD and CAD programs and solids modelers like FormZ and SolidWorks, you have a lot of things that you can do with a solids model, but then a polygon model is a bit different. And MODO uses it goes through and let me see here. You have polygons here that you're working with. And as a polygonal modeler, you're afforded a lot of opportunities to sketch in 3D. It's a very organic way of working. So let's take a look at these. So there's rendering, and we'll get into all these different tabs up here. These are different layouts. And what I always tell my students, I'm also a professor for 3D modeling. I used to work over at Sacramento City College, and I used to teach animation. So MODO is actually, it does a lot of stuff. It does animation as well. But getting back to the modeling side of things, here's our modeling layout. We have all your creation tools on the left side, and then organization tools and options on the right side of the screen. Now this layout could easily be adjusted. There's a really slick way of using MODO and modifying and customizing it to the way that you like to work. And that's one of its great abilities. And again, you know, it's a tool, so if you're familiar with a different tool and you want it to work, you want MODO to work the way you're familiar with, there are things you can do to change that. Such as, if I'm navigating around here, if you notice here, I'm spinning around the screen, or spinning the model around my screen, and it's changing the pitch and yaw, and I don't want to do that too much because it might make you seasick there. But if you're familiar or more comfortable with a Maya sort of interface, or Rhino, or some other 3D navigation of your scene, then you can change that by going to this gear up here, drawing the controls, and you can change the trackball rotation. By default, it's set to work as a trackball. If you want to change that, hit no. So now when you notice, when you spin it around, the y-axis is going to stay put. But then you could spin around your object a little bit more predictably if that's what you're familiar with. And that's kind of cool. And also, we're in the modeling tab here. We're going to do most of our work here in the modeling tab and a few other tabs. I call them tabs and I mean, they're technically called layouts, but I call them tabs because there's a layout. So I call it layout tab. Makes a little bit more sense to me. So you'll hear me call that a tab. All right, so let's get to a little bit more into the modeling here. So we have an existing model here. Let's jump over to the right side and see how things are organized. We have our Novedge bridge study model. That's the name of our scene. So MODO opens up a file that's considered a scene, and that scene holds a whole bunch of stuff, your camera and all that fun stuff. The cool thing about MODO, though, is you can have multiple scenes open. I know other programs can do that too, but let's go ahead and open a brand new one. So we have now an untitled scene. We can close that. And you notice here the eyeball is not showing up. You can actually bring that up and use that as a reference. But really you're working on this untitled scene. So it's kind of cool to have a scene open that you can navigate around and see. Very useful. So let's go ahead and just take a look at this model. And it's kind of simple there. This is a a bridge design. Now, if you notice in the modeling tab, you have your objects that are selected are the only ones that are filled in. Everything else is grayed out. Now, that's by default in the model tab. Now, if you want to see an interface that's more familiar, specifically a quad view, there's a way that you can kind of zoom into a certain view. So I just unclicked this arrow here. This maximizes whatever viewport that you're in. So now that's a quad view. So you have different viewports, and again, you have your top view. So for those of you who are familiar with other programs, such as Rhino, that uses a quad view, or 3D Studio Max, you have the option to split it up into a quad view as well, and then you have this window here. Now the cool thing too is that you have your perspective view. In the top left here, you can change that to your camera view. So now this is what the camera is seeing, so you can rotate around your camera. And there are different ways to see this. Now if you use the default, that's typically what I use. You have your advanced, well, you know what? I should not have done that. It's been my computer is an old MacBook Pro, and I'm streaming this online, and I have a few other files open, so I want to take it easy. So now it's doing that same thing where only the selected object is filled in. In this situation, you can change this to this viewport alone. You have the gear here, and you notice the gears are everywhere else, are in the other viewports. You can change your view options, and under inactive meshes, highlight that guy, and make inactive same as active, and that only affects this viewport. So this is a preferable setup for somebody who's modeling if you need to see the top view, the front and the side view, right view. But you also want to have a filled-in, kind of overview of all your objects in there, of all your elements. So this is kind of, don't critique my design work, because I just kind of threw it in there, trying to push things. Although it is kind of cool. Now, this is something I just whipped up, and let's take a look at this. So what I like to do is work in perspective view. So I go ahead and change that to perspective, or you can use a key command. Go to perspective. You can change this to a top view, and it only affects that view. So the benefit of having that key command and that pie selection window, that option there, is if I expand this, and I can do that with the keyboard, the key command to just focus on that window, that viewport. So now it's maxed out. If I want to work in here and I want to change that to a top view, so if this is the way that you want to work, that is an option. So now the thing is, the changes that we made to the inactive meshes affects this window specifically. So if you wanted to work in that default way, then you'd have to go back and change that. So that's kind of cool. Now let's go work on the perspective. Let's take a look at models. So I'm going to hide the other stuff here. So my bridge walk, and I want to keep that site there. Let's get rid of Figure Man here. All right, so now what we have is this model. Okay, so this is an object in MODO. Now it is considered a mesh. Now a mesh is a type of item. Now I don't want to get too far into that without explaining a little bit more about what you're going to be working with. When we work with items, we're working with the entire thing. So that is essentially a good way to think of it is a container. So it's a container holding elements, or a folder holding paper. So it's kind of like a file folder. In MODO, they call this a layer. And if you look at the item list, it's broken down into these things that have this blue 3D box is called a mesh, and that is a type of layer. And then you have folders, so you can organize different things in there. So the site layer now contains these elements that form this site box. Now, let's say I have this selected and I want to create something. So again, I'm going to create something and not just just observe it. And my dog is crying here. Go. And so I want to make a box, and I have an audience here. Now I want to create this box. So let's go ahead and just make this. So now I made a first plane. Now I'm going to extrude this out. All right, so I'm in element selection. So we have these different types of objects here. And an element was what I had selected, so I was modifying that. And if I select this, if you notice, the selection highlight also includes this box. So this box now is within this site layer. So if I wanted to modify it, it modifies the entire series or set of things that are within that layer. If I wanted to modify this box that I just made separately, what I need to do is change to a polygon or edge or vertex selection mode. And now I can select that separately. Very cool. There's also a cool thing, I'm going to jump ahead, which will let you transform different elements. I'm not having to do any key commands or having a special tool to select between the different types. It's the transform, I believe, transform tool. Element move, way off. Okay, so I just use it. I don't memorize the names. So now this is really cool, especially for polygon modeling. When I first started box modeling many years ago, this was a game changer. This feature in different programs was a game changer, and having it built in to MODO just makes MODO an obvious choice for me to kind of do box modeling. Okay, so there it is. I'm going crazy with that. But what if I want that to be in a different item? Because if I say I have my bridge frame there, or the roof, as I call it, poke that eyeball on the site, that other box disappears. But I wanted this to be its own separate object, so you can just copy it. So what I'm going to do is select one of the faces in polygon mode, and if I double click, then I can select all of them. So now I have that selected. I just do a simple cut. I'm going to create a new mesh. If you notice here, there is a new mesh. The name is grayed out. What that means is that there's nothing in that mesh, nothing in that layer, nothing in that container. So in my buffer, I'm going to go ahead and paste that previous box, put that thing right in there. I have a whole separate mesh. Very cool. That's exactly what I want, and that is my iterative design of a spaceship, or no, I don't know what that is. So I will get rid of that, and I'm going to stick with this rotation here. I'm used to it too. So now what I want to do is create a box. So for those of you who are familiar to unit primitives, or using primitives and bringing it in, primitive is a predefined object that you can bring in, In MODO, what you would do is hold down the Shift key, and if you notice, it changes the tool. So many of the tools that are available to us in MODO have certain options, and these options are activated by different keys. So this key combination would be a Shift and then hover, then click on that box. Now we got us a box. And so put that up, and now if you notice, that box is, filled in. It's not wireframe like the rest of the stuff, but you have a new layer here. Pretty cool. Okay, so there it is. So I was going to make this, but I am kind of moving pretty slow here. So I'm going to modify. I'm going to go ahead and jump to more stuff, because there's a lot of tools in MODO that are very, very, very cool. It may have a similar counterpart in a different program, but the thing about MODO, and you'll discover this if you practice with it and use it for a little bit, you'll find that it increases your speed. It's a very intuitive program, and it's pretty darn cool, for lack of a better term. So now I have my site here. So we have an existing site, and one of the cool things for ArchViz and InDesign is working within measured parameters. So if you notice here, there are tons of tools here. There are a lot of tools to do cool stuff and get yourself in trouble, but let's not get ourselves in trouble. Let's do some cool stuff. So I like using this dimensions tool. That's a toggle that barks at you. My dogs. Sorry about that, guys. I have the dimension tool here, and what that does is whatever object you have selected, it gives you the rough dimensions. So the dimensions of the cage, so to speak. So this is 36 meters, 15 meters, 18.95 meters, and I'm working in metric. You can also change this to work with imperial standard, is that right? Feet and inches. So that is kind of an option that you could modify, and that is also in the preferences. Let's just jump there now, shall we? And we have a whole bunch of different preferences here. So one of the things is OpenGL. You have your trackball rotation. You can turn that off and on here. And also remapping. Oh, here's another thing I was going to talk about earlier, but I think my dogs invaded my room. So remapping, you can change your mouse input preset. We have it set to MODO. If you're a 3D Studio Max user, Cinema 4D, Maya, or Softimage, you can change how the key commands typically are modified. It's never quite the same, exactly the same anyway, but it gets you most of the way there. Okay, and then you can change your units here. And I'll just show you where that is. So I'm using SI units, and I'm just going to take off of there. So getting back to this model. So you have an existing model. You have this site. So let's just bring up the rest of this stuff. We have our bridge roof. So this is kind of a weird design here. Glass. So this is glass. And let's open up that bridge walk. Let's add our figure. Now, working this way is kind of weird, even if you turn on your the shading for the rest of the objects. What I like to do is keep this at default, but then I open up a preview window, and all my dimensions are there. And what that does is it does this, this preview of your camera view, which you can rotate. And MODO has a fantastic rendering preview window that it's really cool. So it just gets more and more detailed. I know the term for it, and it's just, it has lost me. It's gone. But anyway, it redraws as you navigate. So without having to set a render going, I know some of you, those of you who know the term, are just like, what is this guy doing? I forgot the name of it. Iterative, something like that. But anyway, so you have this view, and what I like to do is have a working render of this as I progress through. So now I can still go and I'm using key commands to select the different objects. If I want to change that, I will go ahead and shrink it. So we have modification tools here. Now again, going back to the elements versus the items, this is an item. So I'm selecting the item, and by default, it starts at 0, 0, and I left it at 0, 0. You could definitely move it to wherever you need to as far as the item is concerned, the mesh. But to modify the individual parts of it, you have to go into a polygon mode, polygon selection, or vertex selection. And now I'm in polygons, and so I can modify these guys. Just double click on that to select all. I could modify it, or select none. And when none are selected, all are selected. Isn't that how life is? So we have a nice little curve on there. It was like ginormous earlier, and now it's 4 meters. That's more of what I want. Okay, so I want to shrink this down. And again, that is going off of the center or the centroid of this entire shape. Not necessarily the centroid, but the centroid of the cage that's holding it. So if I wanted to change that, say I wanted to scale this guy from the bottom here, what I could do is just click on that little vertex. So I hovered over that, and it moves the manipulator right to that point. So now it is modifying this mesh object because I have none selected. It's modifying all of the polygons at the same time, shrinking it down based off of that point. And if I want to scale it out this way, then I can. Or if I want to do that, if I was happy with the height of that, but needed it to go down a bit and increase the arc, you can change your orientation or your modification point. In MODO they call that the action center. Well, probably not the action, but there are action centers here. So let's go over what action centers are. Say I wanted to rotate this part here. So I want to rotate that. It rotates it about the center of the selected object. So that's kind of cool. Nice. But what if I wanted to rotate this thing about the center of this entire mesh? You can change the action center to go to origin. Now there's different options to this, and now this changes that. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but you may. But the cool thing about that is if you modify that and have that selected, you also have something within MODO called a fall off. So the fall offs are different ways of modulating the transformation, the deformation, or whatever it is that you're trying to do by by different ways. So the fall off of this it changes the effect of that object. So what I'm going to do, the way to show fall off a little bit better is if I modify all the mesh here, the entire mesh, and we'll go with the origin, let's make it the element, or actually just leave that as none, and linear. So now when I move this up, instead of just moving all of the objects up, it'll modulate it between or within the fall off parameters there. And you have a lavender display showing the different effect that you're going to be placing onto that object. So now we made wings. So so this is based off the center. Like typically it is not symmetrical. So I changed that from symmetric to just the standard. And what happens is that linear shape of the fall off shows how much effect the transformation is going to have on the object that's selected. And so you have a little bit of a change there, more of a change down where the fall off is more is wider. So what that means is if I lift this up, that move, or that move transform is moving the faces that are within that fall off, that's a larger fall off, moving it more, so on and so forth. So I'm going to undo that and just okay. So it is. I undid too much. Let's move that guy back over here. So another cool thing that you can do with the fall off is have soft selection set up. So what soft selection is if you move this object and that you have soft selection set up, it will, it will modulate. Let me just turn this preview off. Maybe let's slow this down a bit. If you notice that it reduces the amount of effect on the neighboring polygons and faces and all that stuff. So what it essentially has is a radius, an effect radius. So you can increase that and include more of the objects beyond. So if you move this now, it affects the different elements in different amounts, depending on how far the radius of influence is. And you modify that here by changing the radius value. So I love this because it's similar to the magnet tool that I used to have in FormZ and other programs. So all these tools that I'm familiar with that I really like using have options within MODO. And it's very, very cool. I wish we had more time. I'm flying through this stuff, and I want to show you so much more. So I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to show you another tool called Mesh Fusion. So I'm going to close out this bridge model. and then open up a study model. Oh, that's my bridge. I've had only a few hours of sleep, so I'm running on this stuff. So this is a model that I've developed here. So I brought in this site. So this site has the outline site that I brought in from SketchUp. I just went and did Google Earth and captured that, brought it into MODO, and now we have this site model. And so I have massing models that I include in here. So there you go. So there is that option. So you can organize your contents in the layout, and you color coordinate, so you can have different aspects of the model in there. And what I have is essentially a series of models that are organized by texture and by layer that show me circulation, vertical circulation, space planning. Obviously, this is a giant site. So you can use MODO to mass out your models and your ideas and create study models and have that be developed. Now we have that site model. Let's go ahead and open up the Mesh Fusion. And it's taking a while to open. And I just... All right. So, sorry about that. Let's take a look. Let's go back, shall we? And when MODO opens up, let's open up a new file. So one of the things with MODO, and this actually is kind of good, stepping back and going back to the model, the house project that I was talking about. In MODO 901, you can create a new project or have an existing project. So what I have is a project based off of that house design. And I will go back to my documents. And there's a project here called Apply Santos. So I'll open that up. And nothing seems to happen, but when I open a file, it navigates to that project. So it's a great way to organize your files in one location so that you can take a look at it or access your files fairly quickly. So here is the site. I brought that in from Google via SketchUp. So there are now, this is the actual site that I was going to build on. And I have a site model that I placed on there. So this site mesh here, it maps perfectly to that the environment. So to do that, I'm going to go and get this mesh here. All right, and then I'm going to just add polygons to this. So just quickly, I'm going to go to polygons mode, chunk that up, and just add more and more faces to it. So there's a lot of detail. And now how we were working in the model tab, let's go over to topology tab. So topology will give you, it's an interface that brings a lot of these tools and makes them active. So this is really cool in that if I have this site selected and I move it, nothing happens to it. It just goes right through the site. But if I set my background, so I'm going to constrain this mesh to the background, I'm going to move it down here. You notice it'll map right onto that environment. So we got that cool site model that we're working on. Then we can turn off our overall site, and we have a contoured, well, not contoured, but a site model that we can work with in 3 dimensions. Okay, cool. So let's close that scene. The reason I normally would have all my files open, but my computer's been acting up. And you can also bring in, I just want to show this, hopefully it doesn't crash it, but you can get your site information from DEM files or GIS. Hold on one second. I swear she's fine. She just did not want to go. So this is a LiDAR scan of that same environment. So there's a lot of data. MODO can handle a whole bunch of data there. Okay, so there it is. So I'm going to close that file. Just wanted to show that. I'll open another one. Let's look at the massing. Okay, so what I've done with that stuff is I have a site, right? And I have these planes. And so these are options that you have for creating a kind of a mock-up of that model. So I'm just throwing in these different space options. And so I have an option here with vertical circulation. And this is all just polygonal modeling, so box modeling. So that creates the spaces there. Now, this is more of a structure analysis. Go back to MODO. And if I go to, I like working in a different view, like setup. That way you can see, or a different tab. So this structure will allow me to kind of build stuff. I have it in a different layer. I have my spaces and then my structure group. So I have different stairways here, so I have different options that I've built. And just like with any other program, you can make different options and different layers. And that kind of works out there. Now you can also bring up your preview window, you can look at different views. All right, now I'm taking up a whole bunch of time here, but one last thing I want to show is, oh, let me change my project. I'm going to close all my files here. Now I'm probably running out of time, aren't I?
That's all right, Henry. One more thing. I think we have a little time, so
Okay.
just now
All right.
we want to know.
You want to know? Okay. So we have. So that was essentially the house model that I built onto a site. And now I want to talk a little bit about oh, wait. Choose project, choose Novedge, choose that. So we are good there. Go ahead and open this file. Now, one of the cool things you can do with 901 is Mesh Fusion is now included in 901. And so what Mesh Fusion is, it's a sort of a dynamic Boolean system. So we have these different elements here. Now, if I go to item selection, I'm going to get that main level, and I'm going to select this ground plane, this cutting plane. Actually, let me just do this. I have this plane and that plane, or that object. So the main level and the upper level. I go back to the model tab here. Under Fusion, let's create a new Fusion file and union these meshes. What happens now is these objects have been combined, and I'm going to select that. We have an active Mesh Fusion. Now, to see this actually work, let's move this guy around. And what I'm going to do is bring up my trusty dusty preview window. So now we have this object that we can move, and it blends with that object below. So it keeps that union in there, and it'll be more obvious when we do this, when we subtract it. So let's see, Mesh Fusion. Let's see. Okay, so it is. All right, so it is not showing up my tree visibility. Oh. All right, so that is why. Let me open up a new file. Let's take a look at this file. So it's a site model, that has this object in there. So you can take your site, and let's say we wanted to do a cut into the site, and we have this different view. So we can create a new Fusion model and change that to a 3D tree view. So if I'm triangle, so it's going to smooth that out. Oh, actually, that was the wrong thing. So if we do this and subtraction, now we can cut out from that site. Okay. So when we have this tree view, we can take this object and then subtract it. And so now we can quickly build up our site. And by adding different objects to this, you can start building your site up. And if you notice, you can change the location of the different elements. And take that out of there, and it affects it differently. Okay. All right. So let's look at one more thing here. If we have time, let's look at how are we doing on time here?
We're good, Henry. Since there's not many questions coming in, I'm gonna let you go and demo
Okay.
this last things
Oh, okay.
because we're
Okay.
having fun.
Yeah, we are. It's not what I expected, but you know, it's kind of working out right now. So what we have here is this object that I created in Mesh Fusion, and we have different objects here. So what I will show is how to create the different shapes of this. So this is kind of like a birdhouse model. So we can modify this, and it changes the look of that object. So these are cutting planes that affect that mesh, that torus shape here. And so now what we have is we have a architectural right here. So we have a cylinder shape that we can modify and change the effect of the cutting. So now we can really chop up this building pretty good here by simply changing things around. You can change the overall shape of that. Okay, so
Very
Pretty
cool,
much covered
Henry.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you.
Yep. Yeah, so not a whole lot of questions.
Um, One question that say again, please. The model on screen now was created in Modo or other or in another pro. Did you use another program?
Oh, this model that's on
Yes.
screen?
Yes.
Oh, I use Mesh Fusion Modo 901, yeah.
Yes.
So
Mesh Fusion.
yeah, so completely done in Mesh Fusion, and it's it's pretty obvious that I think there's a lot more information than I could have provided, and what I am doing is a more detailed training of how to use this. So I'll be working on that, and there are tons of information um, online and webinars and training. There was a great one just previously for transportation design, which was going through a lot of the design iteration, and
Yeah.
that was fantastic. So,
Yeah. I think it's on our webinar
mhm.
series channel on Novedge YouTube channel. So go check it out. I
Yeah.
have another question. Do you often work between different programs alongside Modo?
Yes. Um, a lot of the models that I'm given or that I work with are more detailing oriented. So I work with SketchUp of all things, and then bring it into Modo. But there, you got to be careful with the types of models that you have. SketchUp works with faces, kind of, and you could bring in a broken model into Modo easily, but it works just fine in SketchUp, and it triangulates it. What box modeling is and what Mesh Fusion, especially if I use Mesh Fusion, it works best with quad faces. So a quad model would work out the best for um, if you decide to use Mesh Fusion. So it depends on the workflow. So yes, I use a lot of different programs. Now the one thing that I also wanted to bring to light is Modo is a complete package, and the rendering and the visualization is fantastic. It's incredibly um, powerful. So I'm going to show some examples of some works here. This is stuff I got from the gallery online. So it's used a lot in the visualization aspect of architecture, but it can also be used for design iterations. It's like this structure is very cool, or that one is very Christmassy or holiday-y. And this is a model I built many years ago in an old version of Modo. So, and this is more furniture design, so you can get into furniture design. So yes, so a lot of Modo users, including myself, use different programs to come up with designs and visualization. So any other
No, they look great.
questions?
Yeah. A few of the attendees want to know what's the dog's name and how much trouble she's going to be in.
She's in a lot of. You know what? I did not expect that. I had everything planned out when she showed up. That just she totally threw me off. I apologize. The dog's name is Duchess,
Okay. Oh,
and
wow.
she's a basset hound, so she has a mind of her own. So I'll have to model her later. She's in trouble. But yeah, you know, not to apologize or anything, but there are a lot of things that I wanted to cover that obviously I got thrown off a bit, and I wanted to cover that in a later discussion because I think Modo has a lot more to offer than I've shown today, um, and it's all Duchess's fault. No, no, she's safe. But the thing is, there are a lot of amazing tools within this one package, and it's worth a try. Definitely worth a try, and it is something that will allow you to move. If you're in a sketching workflow now, when you sketch something out as a designer, you want to sketch something out and then bring it out, then MODO is a really good tool to continue that 2D sketching into a 3D environment, and that is something.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like we
Maybe,
will have to have you and Duchess over again for another part two.
yes,
Do not present without Duchess.
oh my gosh, oh my gosh, I'll have a picture of her, a
Yeah,
live
you have to
cam.
render
She'll
her.
be on. Oh my gosh, I kind of, I feel terrible. But I do want to do this again and get
Great.
my thoughts out without having her,
I'm gonna take you
because
up on
you guys
that.
didn't see her, but
No, now
yeah,
we
she
have to.
was actually wreaking all sorts of havoc in here, and it totally threw me off, and I lost track of everything. But so lesson: use MODO, but without the animals in
Yeah.
the room, because they might
No,
throw you off because they're cute.
and don't come up with,
Yeah.
the dog ate my MODO, because that's not
Yeah,
gonna
you know
work.
what? No,
Yeah.
it's not. It, yeah, that's just gonna get it for that. But oh my goodness. So
Go Duchess.
needless to say, I would love to do another talk. Yeah,
Great. We'll stay in
I need to
touch.
do another talk. So well, I wanted to make an impact with this
You
presentation. I
sure
didn't think
did.
it would be this kind of an impact, but it
Whatever, it worked.
it was good.
So thank you so much, Henry. I'm going to
Yeah.
take the screen back. I think you should be able to see it, and I want to, it'll take a little while, but in the meantime, I want to thank everybody for attending. And also, I want to remind you all that, it's time to get MODO 902. If you have MODO 901, great, you're all set up. Just download it for free. And if you have a previous version, I think it's below 801, it's time to upgrade and update. So Novedge is the best way to buy design software online. Best prices, best service. Just give us give it a look and see, and give us a call if you need anything. And for information on the latest specials and new releases, join the Novedge network on Facebook, Google+, Twitter. And don't forget, the next week webinar will be about V-Ray for Revit. And to watch today's webinar or previous one, check out our Novedge YouTube and Vimeo channels. Our webinar playlist has webinars for every software taste. Thanks again for joining us. Thank you, Henry and Duchess. And
All right. Thank you.
have a wonderful day. Bye, everybody.